Now, CBS News correspondent Clarissa Ward on assignment for 60 Minutes.
Ukraine has been dominating the news for weeks. Nearly 100 protesters were killed in a revolution that toppled the president after he reneged on a promise to sign a trade agreement with Europe that would bring the country closer to the West and reduce its dependence on Russia. Russia responded to the revolution angrily, seizing control of Ukraine's southern Crimea region and ratcheting up tensions reminiscent of the Cold War. Our story tonight is about the people behind Ukraine's revolution. What we found was surprising. They are an unusual collection of characters from very different worlds. They came together in Kiev's Central Square, a place that became a battleground and the heart of the revolution. This is Independence Square, known as the Maidan, a sprawling community of tents and barricades and European Union flags. Tens of thousands of Ukrainians have been camped out here for 3 months, braving sniper fire and sub-zero temperatures to topple their government. But this revolution isn't over. We were surprised to find this past week protesters digging in and building up the barricades. They're here to take a stand against Russian interference and to ensure that the demands of the revolution are met. Already paid for in blood, this real estate is just too valuable to give up.
I think this whole square will remain a very powerful symbol for generations to come.
18-year-old Svetislav Yurash is one of an army of young organizers who keep the square running. He's in charge of the media operation. He walked us past the burned-out hulk of the building where he lived and worked before government forces attacked it.
We never thought it could turn into something like this. We never thought 100 people could die. We never thought that the main street of Kiev can be drenched in blood. We never thought that we would come up there and see shells or sniper bullets there.
Every day, people pour in from across the country to lay flowers at the spots where demonstrators were gunned down. At times, it almost seems the protesters are reenacting revolutions of the past. One major intersection is now guarded by a medieval-looking catapult. Soup is cooked in wood-fired boilers that look like steam locomotives. This woman has been ladling out that soup for months now.
How long will you stay here? However long it takes.
These people see themselves as guardians of Ukraine's revolution. It's hard work. Squads of volunteers clean up debris from recent battles, while others chop wood. Night and day, self-defense units in camouflage uniforms patrol the square. For many, tents are the only shelter against the cold.
Can we have a look inside?
Of course we can.
There are people sleeping. Of course. So people are living here.
Every day for the last 3 months, there have been people here sleeping, eating, they've been working. They have been essentially doing everything they can to help the Maidan continue.
We were struck by how well organized and well supplied the Maidan is. Most people don't realize this, but Ukraine's revolution was not your average populist movement. It was supported by some of the most powerful people in the country, like billionaire Petro Poroshenko, one of a handful of incredibly wealthy and influential businessmen known as the oligarchs. Though he bristles at the term because, unlike other oligarchs, Poroshenko didn't make his money privatizing state industries after the collapse of the Soviet Union. He made it through chocolate.
I'm not expert on oligarch, because I try to explain you. But
you don't consider yourself an oligarch,
for sure. No, but people not consider it for me because many of the.
But you're the 7th richest man in Ukraine.
9th.
9th.
Seeing billionaires on the barricades may come as a surprise, but for Petro Poroshenko, the rampant corruption of Yanukovych's regime was simply bad for business.
So why do you think the oligarchs started to support the Maidan protest movement?
First of all, this is about the values. the values, the justice, the absence of the corruption, the fair system of the courts when everybody can defend themselves. If you're asking me what is that, in one word, it is just modernize my country.
Where does the money come from to fund this protest movement?
There is no sponsor of Maidan, please believe.
So you're saying you haven't given any money to this movement?
No, this is not true, but I was together with many people, and I'm not giving more money than maybe 100 or 1,000 people. Please believe.
Surely you can't be implying that this revolution could have happened without the support of this country's uber elite businessmen, the so-called oligarchs.
Not at all. That was not a movement led by the politician. This is not true. And this was not a movement organizing by the oligarch, which is completely not true. People, this is first time in our history, people go on the street by millions of the people demanding not rising up salary, not lowering up taxes, or not moving something. They're demanding the modernization of the country.
How much time did you spend in the square during those months?
Almost all the time. So if you want that people being with you, you should be together with the people. That's important.
With his high-profile role in the revolution and a seat in parliament, Poroshenko is widely regarded as a likely candidate to be prime minister. If Poroshenko is the CEO of the revolution, then retired heavyweight champion Vitaly Klitschko is its face. He now leads a parliamentary bloc. When Secretary of State John Kerry flew to Kiev this past week to meet with the country's top leaders, Klitschko was right beside Poroshenko. Klitschko is used to being the center of attention.
Champion of the world!
He has won 15 heavyweight championship fights. But now he's going for a different title, president. The election is in May. It may be his toughest fight yet.
In sport, you have clear rules. If you break rules, you will be disqualified.
But in Ukrainian politics, there are no rules?
In Ukraine, no rules.
No rules and violence?
No rules and violence.
This is what Ukraine's parliament looked like before the revolution, when Klitschko became a party leader. When the protests began, Klitschko tried to be a voice of moderation. At one point, he was even attacked by more extreme elements of the movement. But it was the government's bloody crackdown that really shocked him. More than 70 protesters were killed in one day. The center of Kiev was on fire.
We never expect the police will use guns.
Shooting their own people.
And shooting their own people and using snipers.
What was your reaction when you saw that?
I can't believe. Grenade exploding and everywhere is fire. It's unreal. It's unreality. It's I have a feeling I am in movie. What's happening with my country? What's happening with my city?
After the horror of the killings came another shock. President Yanukovych fled the country to Russia, and protesters who had endured a brutal winter in the square were told that $37 billion was missing from government accounts. They got a glimpse of where some of that money may have gone when Yanukovych's private home was open to the public.
This is a prime example of just such corruption.
Yurash was one of the first to get inside. I mean, this is what your revolution was about, in a sense. This opulence, this complete lack of respect, almost.
This complete lack of taste as well, on top of that.
On top of that.
This is all stolen money. This is all bribes. This is all corruption. This is nothing that he earned. This is a man who is sitting 2 times in prison, one of them for stealing hats, and now he builds this Versailles for himself.
The house has become an instant tourist attraction, with entrepreneurs outside the gates hawking maps of the estate. Documents found on the scene indicate that Yanukovych spent $30 million on the chandeliers alone. A private elevator adorned with Swarovski crystals can't have been cheap either. Some activists want this to be turned into a museum of state corruption. There is certainly a lot to see. including a boat that was used for dinner parties and a private zoo. Remarkably, there was almost no looting when the house was taken over. When we sat down for a chat in the lavish main hall, flower arrangements from the last days of the old regime had just begun to wilt.
For an ordinary Ukrainian person, what's their reaction to this?
Shocked and outraged. We all knew Yanukovych was corrupt. We all knew he stole money. But the quantity of it is mind-boggling in every way.
Yanukovych is now gone, but his allies in Russia are not letting go. As the world saw firsthand when Russian forces moved into Ukraine's southern Crimea region.
You fought Viktor Yanukovych, and you won. Are you ready to get in the ring with Vladimir Putin?
It's a very difficult fight. It's a very difficult fight for democracy in our country. Russia have idea to rebuild empire.
The Soviet Union?
Some new kind of Soviet Union. But without Ukraine, it's impossible to do it.
But you've said before, no fight, no win.
No fight, no win.
So are you ready to fight?
Yeah, I fight for my country. I fight for the future. I fight for democracy. And I fight for the justice. And I'm not alone.
When the billionaire Petro Poroshenko flew down to Crimea on his private jet to negotiate, he was chased away by an angry pro-Russian mob. This may be the revolution's biggest challenge yet, a showdown with a much more powerful neighbor.
Do you want to see America take stronger action against Russia?
My answer would be America should use all the instruments which have in their disposal.
Including force?
To stop the war.
Including force?
All instruments.
On the Maidan, there are now religious services for the dead every day and constant cries from the crowd that heroes never die. But many Ukrainians are tired of fighting. The victory of this revolution has come at a horrifyingly high price.
It's difficult because I feel some part of responsibility for the people I take also as politician. People go behind me and people died. I'm still alive.
You feel guilt?
I feel guilty for everything what happened in my country also. I take responsibility for everything because I call the people to fighting for the future.